Welcome back to Doc and Hanshi. I'm the Doc.
I'm Hanshi.
And today we are going to talk about our garden tips and tricks. Let's dive on in.
Let's get into it.
Tip number one is make sure that you keep your plants trimmed. So what can happen is if they don't get quite enough light, enough water, or whatever, things can go a little bit wrong and you'll get leaves that look kind of like this. As you can see, he's got like a little brown on the side. He's a guy you'd want to trim off. So I'm going to pick him off right now. When you're taking the plant leaves off, try to get it close to the base, as close to the base as you can. So as you can see, not good. So keeping them trimmed regularly is a great way to make sure that they grow optimally, because when you have leaves that are like partially dead, they are going to be absorbing the nutrients and stuff that the other leaves could be using to grow. So you want to make sure that you keep things trimmed. Also, if there's too many leaves to support on the plant, it will slow down the whole thing. So you want to keep them trimmed. Tip number two, this was one I read about, which I was surprised at how well it worked, is to get a small fan and have it blow gently on the garden. It stimulates as if that the plants are outside, because the gentle swaying of the leaves mimics what's outside, so they grow better, they grow faster. And we were having a little trouble with some of them growing at the beginning, and once I put the fan on there, it was amazing how much faster they grew. So tip number three is to make sure that you sprout things in the water. So what I did is I took the instructions from the yCube refill tips, and this is what we did. We put our new yCubes in trays with water and let them sprout on their own outside. As you can see, I put them in the windowsill with plenty of light, and they are sprouting very quickly. I wish I had known about this sooner. I would have done this when we first got the cubes, because I found that they actually sprouted a lot faster this way than they did by putting them directly in the garden. All right, tip number four, trim your roots. So what can happen is as the plants are growing, they're growing root systems that go down into these tubes. And again, it was something that I didn't really realize until I was reading on the forums about some of the plants were growing a little slowly, and then Kelby was like, trim your roots. So that's what I did. So I got a good sharp pair of scissors, and all I did was gently pull out the plants and trim them. Let me see if I can grab one out easily. I'll take out our basil. So as you can see, I've already trimmed these roots. When I first pulled out our basil plant, the roots were going down like this. And what can happen is it slows it down. It's not ideal. So cut them all down, put them on back in gently. There we go. And tip number five is the type of water we used. So we live in a town where the water quality is so we don't drink our unfiltered water here. There are reports of lead in the water where we live. So we invested a while ago in a reverse osmosis filter. So we filter all of our water, because when you drink in things like lead, they stay in your body and they can cause a lot of health issues. So we've been drinking our filtered with reverse osmosis filtration water for a long time. So when we got our garden, we were like, well, we don't want any of those contaminants being sucked up by the plants that we're then going to eat. It's the same kind of problem. So what we did is the first time we got it, we didn't quite realize how much water we would need for the plant, but that's okay. We just used the filtered water in the base, and we added 1 gallon of water per teaspoon of plant food. Your Kelby assistant will tell you what to do, but that's what we did. And what I can say is that I think that it's making a big difference. I think it would have been slower if we used our unfiltered tap water. The second time we had to refill the tank, it got really low, and then we were like, oh, perfect, we're supposed to clean it. So when we were cleaning the tank, when we put it back together, we had bought a couple of gallons of like bottled spring water, because we were like, well, it took so long to fill it with our reverse osmosis filter. It only has about a gallon at a time. So that's what we did. And then the sixth tip I'd say is make sure you clean your garden every month. Kelby, again, will tell you when to do it, but when I did it, I was very surprised to see it did have a little bit of like a little pink mold in there, a lot of green residue from the plants. So the recommendation is to clean it once a month, because if you've got things like that growing in there, it can really hurt the plants or slow down their growth process. The other thing you can do is every time you change out the yCubes, every time you change it out, clean the sleeve too. It makes a big difference. We'll do another video on cleaning later, but some of the tips I've been reading are using hydrogen peroxide with when you're cleaning it. It's a little less toxic. So that's what we did, is I scrubbed the base with water and hydrogen peroxide, and it came out great. And then tip number 7 is that you can adjust the Kelby light and water schedule. So for us, what we found is that this is like having a solar system inside your house. So it's a little bit bright. And what we were finding is that according to the default schedule on your app, its lights go out at 8 p.m., but then they come back on at midnight. We usually try to go to bed around like 10 or 11. So what would happen is that it would be dark, and then we get into our bedroom, and then boom, the light. So it was a little bit tough to sleep. So I went in, and because they were brilliant with their app, you can actually change the settings. So because I don't really know what I'm doing though, I didn't mess with the schedule really that much. All I did is I changed it so everything was offset by 4 hours. So instead of it being dark from 8 to midnight, I made it dark from midnight to 4 a.m. when it's darkest where we are. So that way it mimics a little bit more the natural day and light cycle. So that made a big difference. And then finally, tip number 8 is, if you can, place your garden where you have tons and tons of windows. What we do is we open up our shades so then the garden gets more light, and what we have been finding is that a lot of these plants, it's hard to see, but you can kind of tell they're growing backwards towards the light, which is great. So they're getting even more light than they need from here. And I think it's really accelerating their growth. So they're very, very happy. So thank you for joining us for our garden tips and tricks. We hope you loved that video. And if you did, please like it. It helps us out a lot. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more. Thanks guys, we'll see you next time.